Tonight, the Middle East stands at one of its most dangerous turning points in years. Israel and the U.S. reportedly carried out over 6,000 airstrikes in Iran since the start of the war. Air defense systems were activated across Tehran. This comes as Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, delivers his first message since the war began, vowing to keep blocking the vital shipping route of the Strait of Hormuz, a passage through which the fifth of the world's oil supply moves. At the same time, Israeli airstrikes have struck the heart of Beirut, with explosions reported just hundreds of meters from Lebanon's government headquarters. Thick plumes of smoke rising over two capitals are now the latest images of a conflict that continues to expand. It has been 13 days already, passing the 12 days that the region witnessed last June, with oil prices passing $100 a barrel for the first time since 2022, as tankers are stranded in the Gulf. Governments are discussing strategic reserves, while global markets react to the possibility of a prolonged energy shock. So tonight, we ask, is the war entering a new and more dangerous phase? Could the tension in the Strait of Hormuz trigger a global energy crisis? To break all of this, we are joined by a panel of guests in a couple of seconds. So tonight we are joined via video conference by J. Michael Springman, attorney, author, and former diplomat in Washington, D.C. Thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here. I'm delighted.
We're also joined by Hamoud Salhi, Associate Dean Professor at the University of California. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome, Miriam. Pleasure being with you.
Always a pleasure. Mr. Shuaib Boutamin, Senior Energy Analyst, thank you for being here with us in our studios.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you. And also with us, Hussam Berkan, journalist at Al24 News. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Miriam. Always a pleasure being here.
Thank you very much. So we may start with you, Mr. Springman. The conflict has now entered its 13th day with continued strikes and growing regional tensions. From a strategic perspective, what phase of the war are we witnessing right now?
We are watching the destruction of the Zionist entity and the depraved government and economy of the United States of America. This war was begun deliberately in violation of the American Constitution, its basic law. Under Article 1, Congress has the power to declare war, not the president. The Iranian armed forces have just about eliminated every American base in the Arabian Peninsula, and they've done severe damage to the apartheid entity. It remains to be seen how long the Americans and the Zionists can keep up the attacks on Iran. Iran is governed by Shiism, that branch of Islam that is wrapped up a lot with pain and suffering and remembrance of murder in the past at Karbala, and the grandson of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and his son-in-law Hussein. So what I expect next, after the closure of the Straits of Hormuz and the destruction of the statelets in the Gulf that are part of the Gulf Cooperation Council and Saudi Arabia, is the loss of their oil exports and the loss of their ability to import food and water. If they can keep attacking Iran, Iran will strike at the desalination plants, and they will not be able to eat cake. They will have to drink sand. I fully expect that when Israel and the United States are at wit's end and face many dead, great loss of equipment and money, it's $12 billion lost so far, they will use nuclear weapons on Iran.
Mm-hmm. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, what phase of the war are we witnessing in this 13th day, almost 14th day?
William, I think it's a hard question. When you look at what's happening on the ground, it is clear that the United States is accelerating, is escalating the conflict. The same thing with Israel, which by coincidence declared today that Lebanon is now a central front in their fight against their enemies. Previously, it was marginalized. The only center of fight was Iran. So that's a development. On the other hand, when you look at the reactions by the public, the cost that is involved, the crisis worldwide, we see that that momentum is getting stronger and stronger. For example, it's been unusual in the last 13 days of the war to see major network in the US addressing some of the issues, human rights issues, or questioning President Donald Trump policy. The narrative in most network has been for the last 12 days about the idea of that the Iranian regime is bad. But now the conversation is also shifting about what is the way out? Where is this war going? On the Israeli front, for example, there is now, and according even to Benjamin Netanyahu today, that the goal is no longer to end the regime, but because that regime could stay longer, a year or 2 years until we come back later. So there is this change of narrative that we are seeing it, but it's also at the same time, as you introduced the program, you have this major escalation by the United States in Israel, particularly in Lebanon. So we have to wait to see. But if I have to bet on this, we are reaching sort of the descent of this conflict. Escalation is there, but it could only be a ploy or a tactic used to force or to establish ground, to establish the United States and Israel on the ground to claim that we are going to end this war because we want something.
Mr. Boutamin, to you, what do you think about this? This is the 13th day. Tomorrow is the 14th. We're almost reaching the 14th day. What phase of the war are we witnessing?
Yeah, I think this is a very complex situation the Gulf countries are passing through. And its impact will not really touch the region, but will touch the global economy. As we know, 20% of global oil is passing through the region, probably the Strait of Hormuz. And the importance of Strait of Hormuz is not only about oil, it's also about natural gas. We know that 81 million tons of LNG produced by Qatar is crossing the Strait of Hormuz, 15% to Europeans and 85% to the Asian market. So that's why we see this impact in the global market of oil and natural gas. And we have seen in the last few days how oil prices increased to $120 a week ago, and today are about $100. It's similar to natural gas in TTF in Europe. Natural gas prices increased from 32 euro per megawatt hour to 51 euro. So let's say 60%. So in the other side, we see that the G7 countries took a decision yesterday to release more than 400 million barrels of oil to reduce the impact of the global economy and to keep oil flowing to the market so they can reduce, let's say, to lessen the impact of the global economy.
Is it going to last? Will this good effect, I mean, this correction of the prices last?
Yeah, this is a temporary decision. So the Americans and Japanese are the ones they hold the largest reserves of oil. For example, Japan decided to release, I think, 80 million barrels. So if we divide 400 million barrels of oil to be released from strategic reserves of 32 countries, members, I mean, from the International Energy Agency, they put a schedule, I think, of 120 days. If we divide 400 million barrels by 120 days, we get like 3.5 million barrels of oil per day. But here, this is the point. Now, the market, we are missing 10 million barrels of oil per day because we have 21 million barrels are passing through the Strait of Hormuz, But other countries, they have alternatives. Saudi Arabia, for example, has the petrol line, which can export 5 million barrels of oil through the Red Sea, avoiding the Strait of Hormuz. So now, collectively, we recovered 10 million barrels, but we still lacking 10 million barrels. So now with this release, we cover only 40%, 4 million barrels, but we still lacking 6 million barrels. And this is the problem now. We have a great pressure on the global economy. That's why I strongly believe that this war may end up quickly, because the global economy cannot withstand this pressure of high prices. We know that since the start of war in Ukraine, and we have seen how natural gas prices spiked to 350 euro per megawatt hour in the summer 22. And ECB, European Central Bank, and Federal in United States, they were struggling a lot to decrease the inflation, and now they reached the good levels. They struggled for 4 years just to put it normal.
To stabilize.
Stabilize it,
prices.
yes. But now there is another issue. It's the war in Iran. And the importance of Iran, as I said, it's not about only oil and natural gas. It's that most of OPEC members their reserves or their oil pass through that Strait of Hormuz. Saudi Arabia, Qatar, UAE, Kuwait, Bahrain, all these volumes, they pass through that region. Now we are facing a big challenge. How can we ensure and we avoid this supply disruption?
How to compensate the 6
How to compensate it?
million
So
barrels
the
per
only
day.
solution we have for the globe is to stop this war.
So
No
you think
country-
this phase is maybe not going to last longer than that? What would you call that?
Yeah, no country at the moment can replace that 10 million barrels. No country. In the oil and gas industry, we cannot increase 2 or 3, 1 million barrels of oil just in very short time. We need time. We need long time investments, and we need a crucial, let's say, a big money we have to invest. So, and this is a critical point. I strongly believe that this war may end up quickly. The ones who launched the war, they have to stop it as soon as possible, because the world cannot really cannot support this war longer.
Hussam, maybe very briefly, what phase of war are we witnessing today?
So basically, Maryam, in order to answer this question, we need to see the timeline and the events since the beginning of this war. And basically, what analysts are calling this phase is a transition from an initial shock phase into a sustained military campaign, which means that at the beginning of the war, there was a huge attack from the United States and Israel into Iran, and they call it the shocking phase because they decapitated the leadership, assassination of the supreme leader, and even like probably as a lot of reports are suggesting, there was an attack on a school. You got it, with 160 casualties. Most of them were kids. So it's just a message to shock Iran that it is a serious shock. So this is called the shocking phase. And as the days are going, now we're transitioning into a sustained military campaign. You just mentioned that there were thousands of strikes. I believe you said 6,000 strikes.
Since the
So now we're not talking about a symbolic exchange of missiles, but a very systemic campaign to destroy military assets of Iran. So we're transitioning from the shock into a sustained military objectives in this war. Not only this, but that Reuters and Associated Press are talking currently about the development of the war going beyond the United States, beyond Israel and Iran. They're going, as the professor was saying, to energy infrastructure of the Gulf countries, and what happened in the Hormuz Strait is going to affect not only these two parties involved, but multiple parties all over the world. He was talking about Japan, the United States, China, Russia. So as days are going, we're seeing that multiple actors are being involved, which means that we're going toward another phase, not only the initial shock, but we could call it an economic pressure, because the tools of the bottle now is not just traditional tools. They can use the energy as a card to put pressure not only on Israel and the United States, but on multiple actors in order to reach a certain goal, probably stopping the war. So I believe that it's a transition from a shocking phase into a sustained military operation.
Before you leave, Hussam is going to leave us right after this. With the war now affecting energy markets, you said that shipping routes, military bases, and also civilian infrastructure, civilian populations across several countries, not just Iran. Are we witnessing the transformation of this conflict into a broader regional war? Everyone is afraid that this conflict could expand beyond just Iran and Lebanon.
Exactly. So, Miriam, as we were talking, analysts are calling this a regional spillover. So we're trying to avoid the word fully regional war, because it's not a fully regional war, but it's going or heading toward a regional war. But so far, it's being contained. We should mention the fact that there are multiple countries that are trying to mediate. There are multiple countries who are going toward diplomatic solution, talking about China, even Russia and Turkey, and some regional actors. So there are attempts to contain the conflict, because nobody wants a regional war in the Middle East. Especially, it's one of the most important regions in the world, especially in terms of energy, because most of the countries of the world rely heavily on the oil and gas of that region. So basically, just to sum it up, Miriam, it's not a regional war, but it's a war that is the consequences of the war are affecting the region. Just like to rephrase it, it's not a regional war, but the consequences are affecting the whole region.
Mr. Springman, back to you. Just today, the UN Special Rapporteur on Counterterrorism and Human Rights has rejected US President Donald Trump's justification for the war in Iran, warning that such a conflict could lead to greater stability.
Well, the man is entirely correct. Trump is a deranged lunatic who has no idea of Iran, West Asia, Islam, Arabs, or anything else. The man has supplied thousands of anti-missiles to Ukraine to fight the Russian Federation. And at the same time, he is attempting to defend the Zionist entity from Iranian missiles raining down upon them. He's run out of missiles in both regions. It takes 2, possibly 3 missiles, very expensive missiles, sometimes $1 million a copy, for the Patriot battery and what they call the THAAD, a Terminal High Altitude Area Defense, to shoot down one $50,000 drone or maybe a more expensive ballistic missile. The American government has done its best to censor news in the United States, though what is actually happening to its forces and to the apartheid entity. And sensible people like Colonel Douglas McGregor, USA retired, and Lieutenant Daniel Davis, USA retired, have repeatedly gotten on YouTube past the censors and told exactly how the Americans are losing their bases and have opened up Israel to destructive attacks by the Iranian armed forces. They have underground missile cities. They produce weapons such as drones and ballistic missiles underground. They have racks and shafts and tunnels full of small, fast vessels that can be used against any idiot American warship that tries to escort tankers past the Straits of Hormuz. There is no realization here in Washington as to what they've started, what they are doing, and how they can end it.
In his official first message since being elected, Iran's new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, said Iran is compelled to continue targeting U.S. bases in the region. He recommended disabling those bases, claiming Iranian citizens were targeted and killed from them. Khamenei also noted that Iran shares borders with 15 countries and stressed Tehran's desire to build constructive relations with its neighbors.
As we had given an explicit warning and without carrying out any aggression against those regional countries, we remain committed to the necessity of friendship between ourselves and those neighbors, and we have merely targeted those US bases. From now on, we will also be compelled to continue this action.
Mr. Hamoud Salhi, Iran's new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, issued a strong statement vowing to continue the fight and warning that new fronts could open. How significant is this message for the direction of the conflict, since we're talking about what phase we're in right now?
I think the Israelis' reaction is best to describe it. They stated, or some of the reports says that if they knew this is what they would get, they would have kept Ali Khamenei alive. Of course, there's a lot of things behind it that this is also again to give Israel another justification by saying that we have now a stronger threat, so they would expect more weapons for themselves. But what's very interesting in the speech or the declaration is how it is presented and how there is so much in it, in probably 6 or 7 points. And the reason it's some kind of sort of writing or giving it or a certain tone that you could see if we were hearing the leader himself, that there is some kind of sadness. There is talk about his father, his family, and throughout the speech at the beginning when he started, he remembers that the killing of his father is not bigger than the entire nation. So he returned to that and talked about the sacrifice that his people are given. And there he takes a strong position, noting the sacrifices that the Iranian people have gone through, but they remained united. And this is in reference to the fragmentation or the push that the Israelis and American are doing to dismantle the Iran. So he talks about that in a very briefly, but again he also addresses his strong support or sort of the resistance of the resistance movement that the Westerns were hoping it would be otherwise, that he would not support them. He thanked the Lebanese, or in general, the resistance. But then again, towards the end of the speech, or the middle of the speech, he goes back to his father. And here again, we see that also he's protecting the legacy of his father by saying, for example, that he talks about his intellect, his contribution, but he also references that the marja'iyyin or the religious scholars will know a lot about him later. And this is perhaps in reference to Mujtaba's background. He was in his 30s and early 40s when the establishment of the Ayatollahs and many other the debate in Iran was about the merits of Ali Khamenei, that he was not the supreme ruler. He doesn't have the credential that we should have in an Ayatollah. And Iran at that time, under Ahmadinejad, the presidency, went through this huge debate about who should be the Ayatollah, and the emphasis was on an intellect. So this is also a reminder of that. And then towards the end, he comes back to the same theme, reminding us that reminding, telling the people that for those who are victims that there is help. And he uses the term مستضعفين, which also very significant, because again, his belief that Iran will continue, that tell us that will continue lead the Muslim world, or the mode of the underprivileged, the less
fragile.
So those are, so it's in many ways, it was an introduction to his thinking, but filled with with a lot of emotion. And out of all of that, I think we learned one thing, that he does watch TV, because he did mention that he was watching the elections, and perhaps that's in a reference to the fact that there were some differences and debate, as normally would be.
We'll just take a second to thank our colleague who was with us for the first half of our show, Hussam Berkan. And back to you, Mr. Shuaib Boutamin. We're seeing the developments around the Strait of Hormuz and how important and serious they are, where shipping activity has been heavily disrupted during those 13 days. How dangerous is this for the global maritime trade?
This is very dangerous. And especially we have seen in the last few days how many tankers, oil tankers, have been attacked in the region, in Oman and in Saudi and other countries. And this is really impacting, as I said, the global economy. It's impacting the global supplies of oil, of natural gas. We talk about the energy sector. And it's impacting the goods transportation and maritime transportation. And this has, as I said, it will have a big impact in the global impact. So let me shed light on something I see very important. Many people and many analysts, they just make comparison what happened with Russia and what happened in Venezuela. If we go back to 4 years ago, what happened in Russia and Ukraine, if we talk about supply disruption, this is the critical moments and time in which we really talk about supply disruption. This was not in the scenario of Russia, Ukraine. We remember in 22 when the war launched in Europe, the G7 countries and the Occident imposed sanctions on Russia.
The G7.
G7, yeah, to seal the oil price on $60. But we didn't have the problem of supply disruption. Let me remind you, 2 weeks ago, oil prices were like $67, $68. And we had like a surplus of offer in the global market. We didn't have a shortage of oil. So the problem we have today is not a production problem. We have an abundance of oil and natural gas and natural resources.
Okay.
The problem is disruption problem. So if we compare it to the Russian scenario, we go back to the Russian scenario, the global oil and the oil and natural gas were really flowing to the market. That's why we had availability, we had abundance. If we go to the scenario of Venezuela, we had like an attack of a few hours, took the president, and that tankers of oil, that vessels have been taken by the US and they were sold. So we didn't have this supply disruption. And this is the case today we are facing. Yes. And that's why I believe the region is not really a hub of energy. The importance of Iran, it has like two critical things, two strong things. Iran is producing like 3.5 million barrels of oil. So it has playing a crucial role in the global supplies of oil. Iran also has the second largest reserves of natural gas. Iran also is the second largest, let's say the third largest producer of natural gas after the US and Russia. So if we go to the reserves, the region is that we have plenty of reserves of oil and natural gas. That's why I think it's a sensitive matter if we talk about Iran. The strong point of Iran is not only oil and natural gas and its controlling the Strait of Hormuz. Its strongest point is it can really impact all the region. It can create troubles in the region if I don't know, negotiations, they cannot really to reach to any negotiations. Okay. So that's why it's very critical for the world, for the ones who launched the war, I think, to negotiate with Iran and to listen and to discuss how this choke point is playing for the global economy. Because even the US, we talk about the United States is not taking too much oil from the region. It's only taking 0.6 million barrels of oil from the region. Contrary to China. China is taking 6 million barrels of oil from the region, 10 times what the US is taking. But then this is the point. United States, it's not directly impacted, but it's not directly impacted by the war, but indirectly it's really impacted, because when we have supply disruption, we don't have enough oil and natural gas to supply the global market, so prices spike.
How longer can the region, first thing first, sustain this, stand this disruption? For how much time, really?
Nobody knows, but it's very hard. Nobody can sustain the situation. It's very hard. So even the United States also cannot sustain longer with this situation.
We've seen Trump yesterday saying that the war should end quickly and there are no more targets in Tehran that we are targeting. Does that mean that it is time for them to actually stop and really reach mediation? Because we've seen the latest declarations from the US part being a little bit less aggressive than in the first days of the war.
I tell you the story. United States is importing 6.5 million barrels of oil per day. If prices increase more than $100, United States will pay importing oil very expensively. And the Americans cannot sustain to this. Gasoline prices, diesel prices, they will jump, they will spike very soon. So even from the internal side, the American government cannot support that pressure, because there is election, I think, in the US this year.
Midterm elections.
So it will not serve his interest. The president will not be served by this situation. So they have to find a way to this. But in the meantime, we have supply disruption. But at this situation, I think some countries can take profit of this. There is what we can say a market share war at the moment. Russia can profit. There's supply disruption in the region. Russia can supply more oil and natural gas to the Europeans. It could be used like a card to negotiate with Europeans, to negotiate maybe to supply more oil and natural gas to Russia and also to, let's say, to China and India. United States also can supply more natural gas to the Europeans. And
we might get back to this very specific point in just a couple of minutes. Mr. Springman, there are reports that Iranian strikes have affected multiple U.S. military sites across the Middle East. How significant is this for regional security and the broader military balance?
It is very important. The Americans essentially have occupied the Arabian Peninsula. They established their bases in Saudi Arabia and the Gulf statelets, or maybe we could call them the Gulflets, and those bases were used to attack the Islamic Republic. They have been struck back. They have been wiped out for the most part, from the little bit I can get from the terribly biased news coverage that's shown here in the United States. The former Secretary of State, Henry Kissinger, once said that it's dangerous to be America's enemy, but it is still more dangerous to be America's ally. And Qatar, Kuwait, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates all thought they were allies of the United States, and they let the United States build bases there and use those bases to attack the Islamic Republic. I did see one piece on television here in Washington where these fools on NBC News asked the Foreign Secretary Abbas Araghchi why he was attacking American bases. And his reply was very simple and had them thunderstruck. He said, those bases are attacking my country, so we have to fight back. So the Americans have lost a great foothold in West Asia. And if the Islamic Republic manages to stop the flow of petrodollars coming out of these countries and invest it in the American stock market, the American stock market will collapse, along with a good bit of the American economy, because it's huge companies have invested greatly in the stock market. Many rich Americans and many ordinary Americans put their money into the stock market. And if that crashes and no money is coming out, no dividends are paid, no capital gains are realized, it's going to be a very sad story for the entire country's economy.
Back to you, Mr. Shuaib Boutamin. We were talking about the Strait of Hormuz. Right now in the Strait of Hormuz, many oil tankers are stranded in the Gulf. Because of the tensions in the Strait, they are afraid of crossing, they're waiting to cross. What risks does this pose for global energy supply chains again?
Yeah, the risk, as I said, the risk is very big. It's very large. And this will be given opportunity for other countries, I believe, to work to be like an alternative. And Saudi Arabia now is started exporting its oil through a petrol line, avoiding Strait of Hormuz. Now it's exporting it through the Red Sea. And I think other countries will try to think about other alternatives in the future. And other countries out of the OPEC members, like United States, Brazil, Argentina, Guyana, they will increase their production. And as I said before, this will be a war of market share. Because if you get your market share now, you can have, it will be very difficult to release it. And I have read today, this morning, I think that India is approaching Algeria to get LNG from the country, from Algeria. So if we talk about the supply disruption and the problems around the Strait of Hormuz, other players can take profit of the situation. And damaging let's say the economic, the global economic, let's say, elements, how oil and gas are disrupted, will have big impact on the global economies in the United States, in China, and in Japan. As you know, 90% of the Iranian oil is taken by China.
So it will be the most affected country from this closure, or China is actually dealing with it right now?
The good thing of China, it has the largest strategic reserves of oil in the world. It has more than 1.5 billion barrels are stored in China. So China can sustain for longer. China took the opportunity a few months ago when the prices went down to $60, $62, and they bought huge volumes of oil because they have very good relation with Iran. So they took oil from Iran. They were and discounted oil from Iran and even from Russia and even from Venezuela. So I think China has a good reserves. United States, at the moment, its strategic reserves at 415 million barrels. They are at lowest level 622. And now United States will release more oil from SPR.
We have seen that.
And so this United States will be at risk. The most ones will be affected, I think, are the Europeans. In kind of oil, Europeans. And in kind of natural gas, Asians. Because 85% of LNG crossing the Strait of Hormuz is oriented to the Asian market, and only 50% to the European market. So I think the ones will be most impacted are Europeans and indirectly Americans. Chinese in the short time, I think they can manage the situation, but if we talk about medium and long terms, everybody will be impacted by this problem.
Mr. Hamoud Salhi, the Iranian state television has just announced receiving the launch of a new wave of missile attacks towards the occupied Palestinian territories, in yet another sign that the war is not even close to come to an end. What's your take on that?
Well, they have been very they have had credentials. The Iranians have said it time and time again,
Yes.
that they would retaliate and they would continue fighting the war. And they are going to escalate it. And so this is well within what they were asking. I think the same thing what the Americans are thinking. The Iranians are also looking and reading the environment very carefully and accurately. The last war in June 2025, it ended because the Israelis started to feel pressure. There were questions in the street, the problems of the economy, and sort of. And then you have the Americans who came to their rescue and basically said, forced Netanyahu to stop it at the time, to stop the war, because the Israelis were on the verge of losing, or they lost the war. And from that perspective, we could see this is the same thing happening. What's happening in the debate in Israeli politics, in the street. For a while, remember back in January when this is ended, the life seemed to be going returning to normal in the Zionist states. And there was some kind of casual, going back to normal with less demonstrations. And of course, Gaza on the ground was forgotten, and particularly since they received their last hostage. So the Israelis were very comfortable, but that ran against the interest of Netanyahu. He wanted war as his way of survival. I think that's what's happening today in Israel is two dynamics running against each other. There is the regime, the Zionist entity that wants to continue this war because of personal agendas. And let's not forget grand ideologies, the Greater Israel, with all the ultra-conservative terrorists behind that theory. And on the other hand, you have the public who is suffering and constantly suffering. So when the Iranians are hitting hard and continuously, they will make impact. And also, just knowing how they read well the environment, there were some analysis or basically questioning or that the Iranian cannot continue doing the things that they were doing, or the same degree of attacks on the Zionist entity. But this proves that they are misled, and it also shows the degree to which the Iranians have been able to hold their own, and more than anything else, have the military, the capabilities to do damage in ways that the United States and the Israelis did not expect it.
Mr. Springman, we have just heard that the Iranians have launched a new wave of strikes on the occupied territories. Can this be sustained for a longer time? Are Iranians showing that they can keep on going? Was this not expected by the Zionist entity and by the U.S.?
Well, the criminal American government did not expect this, and the satanic Zionists did not expect that. But the Iranians have certainly proved for the last 2 weeks that they can fire missile after missile and drone after drone and hit their targets. The Americans and the Israelis, that wretched little country about the size of the East Coast state of New Jersey, simply can't withstand this battering. The Iranians have wiped out the port of Eilat, otherwise known as Rash, and Haifa, which most people call Al Haifa. The refineries there are gone, the ports there are gone, and they will probably use nuclear weapons to bring an end to the conflict. They cannot sustain this battering any longer. I would say to the end of the month will be the absolute limit for the survival of the Zionist entity.
Okay.
So I firmly am of the opinion that they either surrender, which they will never do, because their idea is to create Eretz Israel from the Nile to the Furat. So the Iranians say, we will stop fighting anytime you want to pay reparations, you want to surrender, and you want to treat us like a normal country. The United States and Israel have been attacking Iran since 1953, from the overthrow of Mossadegh to repeated attacks, assassinations, the Stuxnet virus, and the martyrdom of the former supreme leader, the father and the mother and the wife of the current supreme leader. So he's not about to compromise. He is representing Iran, the people, its culture, and he will never surrender to a gang of criminals.
They're not going to compromise. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, Russia has called on the United States and Israel to end the war, while Turkey warns against attempts to incite a civil war inside Iran. What does this tell us about the growing international dimension of this conflict?
So there is a bit of national interest there for Russia, which is very interesting, just as a note, and I'm not going to sort of contradict my friend Shoaib, he's an expert here, but there is sort of an understanding that Russians are also wants this war to go longer because of the revenues they might generate from the gas and oil prices. And what's very interesting, even the United States, who has given a temporary waiver to India for a 30-day waiver to sell oil to Russia, is, according to certain reports, contemplating the possibility of lifting some sanctions against Russia. So there is those dynamics that we have to take into account, but it is not in the interest of any parties. Turkey, in particular, because of its presence in the region, the Kurds, the impact that will have on its national security, particularly if we were to see a dismantled Iran, that will have a huge spillover on Turkey. And also Russia, because what Russia, I think, main goal is to regain its strategic presence in the Gulf region, a support for the Iranians, and a strong support for the Iranian is not only giving back the favor that the Iranians gave them in Ukraine, but it also positioned them to be perhaps a player in what it is shaping to be a new Middle East. And from that perspective, it is a good policy to argue that to push for a settlement or an end to this war. But I think, as I repeated many times, the Iranians have a say in this. The United States and Israel do, but this war could end the same way it ended back in June, in last June 2025, but basically by one player, the United States or Israel, comment to say we achieved our goal and we're out. President Donald Trump from this is talking about 2 weeks, 4 weeks, 5 weeks sometimes. So we don't know, but that's really where the idea is. These diplomatic maneuvers are important, and they play a major role in bringing the parties together, especially if they don't write. And I have in mind, for example, the latest United Nations Security Council meeting, which ended up by condemning, attacking, or sort of one side, not the other, taking side on one issue, not the other. We need sort of a certain kind of peacemakers, perhaps Algeria, perhaps Oman, to be leading or to be engaged or to have some kind of impact in this negotiation. The rest is really political maneuvering and no more than anything else. But at the end, Miriam and Shoaib and our guest, the end result is the Americans have a say in this, and they could stop this anytime. The Iranians wanted to go further, but they also are aware that the war has to end at one point or another.
The war has to end at one point or another, Mr. Shaib.
Yeah, exactly. At just 1 minute, just to clarify something very important. When the United States gave waiver to Russia to sell its oil to India for 1 month, this is to keep global oil flowing to the market, so the prices they will not spike. But allow me to clarify something. When, for example, China, United States, when they design a refinery for oil, yes, it's designed for a specific oil. It means saying that Russia can replace, Russian oil can replace the Gulf countries' oil in the Asian market, this is partially wrong. I tell you why.
Okay.
Because the oil in the Middle East, in Gulf countries, is light or medium.
It's different as the
yes,
one
it's
in
different than the one in Russia. It's medium to heavy. When you design a refinery, it's big investment, $5 billion or $10 billion, $7 billion. You build it in a few years. So in the country, you need heavy oil, you need light oil, and you need medium oil. So some refineries in the United States and in China and Japan and South Korea are designed for light oil, which is specifically for the Gulf countries and the Algerian oil, for example, which is very light and sweet. And by the way, the Algerian oil is one of the best oils in the world because it's sweet and it's very light. So we don't invest a lot to refine it. So you may ask me, you say, why United States is importing oil, 6.5 million barrels of oil per day, but United States is exporting 4.5 million barrels of oil per day. You say, why it's exporting and it's importing? I give you the answer. When United States built its refineries 50 years ago, it was designed for medium to heavy oil, for the oil of Venezuela, heavy oil, and for other refineries in the world.
In the region.
In the region. But in 2014, United States, when we talk about the boom of the shale oil in the United States, shale gas and shale oil, and from the shale oil, United States is producing more than 80% of oil is light. And its refineries have been built for heavy oil. So United States have now an extra surplus of production of light oil. That's why United States is exporting its light oil and it's exporting its light oil and it's importing heavy oil from Venezuela and from other countries. And this is why United States is getting just 0.6 million barrels of oil from the Gulf countries, because it's similar to the United States oil. It's light to medium, and the United States has huge volumes of light oil.
Light oil, thank you for the clarification. And hundreds of thousands of Lebanese are currently facing dire humanitarian conditions due to Zionist or renewed Zionist aggressions against their towns, particularly in the south. This has forced them to flee their homes and seek refuge northward, even if only temporarily, from the indiscriminate attacks of the occupation forces, which make no distinction between men, women, and children. Osama Ayadi has the report.
Hundreds of thousands of Lebanese civilians have been forced to flee their homes in southern Lebanon as military attacks intensify, creating a growing humanitarian crisis. Families are leaving their towns and villages heading north in search of safety, but many are struggling to find adequate shelter. Displaced people describe the deep pain of being forced to abandon their homes and communities while hoping they will one day be able to return. Roads and streets in part of the south have been crowded with civilians moving towards safer areas, with many unsure where they will find refuge.
Regarding the
escalation that happened yesterday, it was a very major escalation that all the stations covering the crisis since the beginning have touched upon. I say to all the enemies, take a lesson from Gaza. They said they wanted to eliminate the resistance. And they tried by every means, burning children in hospitals, killing and terrorizing. Yet the resistance is still continuing. They are still here, and rockets are still being launched from behind them.
مستمرة وهن عم موجودين عم يطلع أطلاق الصواريخ من خلفهم.
Temporary tents have appeared in several locations, offering limited protection from the harsh winter cold. These makeshift shelters have become the only refuge for many children, women, and elderly people who are driven from their homes by the ongoing violence.
We are against the escalation. We don't want war. We want peace. We want our children to live in this country and secure their future in this country so they can live. War leads nowhere except to destruction, devastation, and death. We don't want war, we want peace. Let them find a solution already and end this, because people are exhausted and worn out.
As the wave of displacement continues to grow, large numbers of civilians are now sleeping on streets and roads or taking shelter wherever they can. Many remain exposed to difficult living conditions while the conflict and bombardment of the Zionist war machine persist.
So we have seen the numbers of the displaced people in Lebanon has reached 100,000. According to UN reports, just today the Israeli occupation said to Lebanese citizens in the southern suburbs of Beirut to evacuate. They issued evacuation orders. This is the first time they do it. We're seeing a growing and worsening humanitarian situation with hundreds of thousands fleeing Lebanon after the latest airstrikes also on Beirut today. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, how serious is the emerging refugee crisis? Before we wrap up, we only have a couple of minutes left.
Well, just factor in, we're talking about potentially 1.2 million people who will be affected by this. But it also means displacement, destruction of a large number of territories of Lebanon. It is devastating to Lebanon, to the entire region, and it speaks volume by the atrocities, the genocidal activities that the Israelis are adopting in Lebanon.
Mr. Springman, a comment about the refugee crisis in Lebanon.
Well, it's appalling. I know a Lebanese woman that I met in Iran, and she told me she had just taken in 10 refugees. The women were dead silent, and the children were crying uncontrollably. And it is an outrage, it is a humanitarian disaster that is ignored by the oh so terribly concerned Americans and the wonderful Europeans who ignore what's happened in occupied Palestine and what's happening in West Asia. It's unconscionable, it's outrageous, and it's a crime against humanity.
It's a crime against humanity. Thank you very much, Mr. Springman, for your time and your intervention.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here, and I'm appreciated your opportunity to give me a chance to speak my mind.
Our pleasure. Mr. Hamoud Salhi, always a pleasure also to have you in our channel and in our discussions as well.
Thank you so much, and my gratitude to our friend Shuaib.
Thank you very much, Shuaib Boutamin, for coming in tonight to our studios and for all of your insights.
Thank you very much. Thank you, my friend Hamoud Salhi, and your guest. It's all the time a pleasure to be here with you.
A pleasure. Thank you very much. And thank you, dear viewers, for following this edition. See you in the next ones.